All right, we're back for some more college basketball best bets here on the channel. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, and we had yet another positive day yesterday here on the channel. We had one off day, which was of course Monday, but a 4-1 bounce back spot yesterday. Everyone taking care of business yesterday except for those damn Syracuse Orange on the road against the lowly Miami Hurricanes. But other than that, a 4-1 day. Shout out to UCLA for coming back and covering. Of course, Bama winning outright. We had San Jose State with the cover as well, and another victory out of the Southeastern Conference as well, with the Florida Gators going to Mississippi and taking care of business against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. So a 4-1 day, looking for more of that success today here with our Wednesday best bets. And folks, before we get into those best bets, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Just helps out the channel a lot if you hit that subscribe button down below and leave a like. And later today, in a couple hours, we will have our NBA predictions. Guys, there are 15 games today in the NBA. So yes, if you're counting, that means every team today plays in the National Basketball Association. So we're in for one of those videos. And this is my problem. I started recording today at 3:22 in the morning. Yeah, I'm gonna be up all night. Anyways, let's get into it. The first of our, actually, hold on. We also have a UFC video this week as well. Can't forget Jared Cannonier, Gregory Rodriguez in the main event of UFC this weekend. So make sure to go check that video out. Link is in the description down below. Also, probably gonna have a kind of Luka Doncic Lakers vlog. I went to the Lakers game and Luka made his debut the other night. I think we'll have that vlog up on the channel later today. So stay on the lookout for that. All right, on to the first of our 5 best bets for college basketball tonight. We start in the Big East. I mean, had to go to it. I think it's the biggest game of the day on Fox Sports 1 at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6, of course, on the East Coast. St. John's going to Villanova. St. John's has solidified themselves as a top 10 team in college basketball this season. I mean, shout out to Patino getting this team going. I mean, kind of coming out of nowhere. I don't think anyone expected St. John's to be this good. I mean, again, this is a top 10 team in the country this season. This is a squad that missed the NCAA tournament outright last year, and now they are a shoo-in, obviously, for the tournament and potentially a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament as well. They have lost 1 game in the Big East all year long, and it is their road loss in 2024 in December to the Creighton Blue Jays, and that was by 1 point. So 1 point separates them from being undefeated in the Big East, 13-0. I mean, it's ridiculous. They have not lost this year in the calendar year of 2025, of course, as that Creighton loss came back in 2024. But now we get St. John's and Villanova. I think St. John's continues this hot streak. I mean, back-to-back games. We talked about how crucial last week was for St. John's, right? A Tuesday game against Marquette at Madison Square Garden. They win it. They go to UConn. They beat the Huskies. It doesn't get bigger than that. I get it. This could be a letdown spot, but they haven't played in 5 days. I understand they're going on the road to Pennsylvania to take on Villanova in this spot, but they've been off again for a while. Their last game was last Friday. And for the Villanova Wildcats, just a middle-of-the-pack Big East team, if we're being honest here. 7-6 in the conference this season, 14-10 as a whole. Sure, back-to-back victories against DePaul and Xavier, but prior to that, 3 straight losses to Georgetown, to Marquette, and to Creighton as well. Again, Creighton is a good team. Obviously, they hold the only victory over St. John's this season. Marquette's good as well, but a home loss for Nova against Georgetown. The Hoyas have been very disappointing this season. Now, if we're talking about Villanova, though, we got to talk about one of the leading scorers in all of college basketball. I believe he actually might still be the leading scorer in all of college basketball. Of course, we're talking about Eric Dixon. Yes, Eric Dixon does have more points per game than Jamal Mashburn of Temple. Dixon leading all of college basketball in points per game with 24. But once you get past Eric Dixon, and this is why Villanova isn't some powerhouse this season, it's just the team around Dixon isn't all that great. You get Popular, who's averaging 14.5. Jordan Longino is averaging 11.5. But again, it is all Eric Dixon, and Villanova needs an extraordinary effort on a nightly basis out of Dixon if they're going to win games. I mean, again, this is a guy who's going to give you his 24 pretty much every single night. It's kind of odd, I think, honestly, if Eric Dixon doesn't get 24 points, he kind of just hits that. It's like, obviously this doesn't have the legs that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander joke had in the NBA, but when Shai was only hitting 31 points for like 10 games in a row, that was always the thing with Shai. It's like, oh, he's gonna get his 31 points. Well, Eric Dixon will likely always get his 24 for Villanova, but it's not gonna be enough. Again, Nova, to me, It's kind of a one-man squad, and they're taking on a very good defensive team in St. John's, and a team that can score as well. But this is a team, again, that plays shutdown defense, and that was apparent in their home win over Shaka Smart and Marquette. I mean, the way they're able to dominate the ball defensively, or to dominate that game defensively against Marquette. I mean, that big stop and the block at the end of the game. I mean, St. John's was playing great defense all game long, and that's what they've been doing all season long as well. This is a team that's led by RJ Lewis, who's averaging 17.5 points a game. Zuby Ejiofor averaging 14. You get Kaderi Richmond, who's averaging 12. St. John's is just a better basketball team. They play better defense than Villanova, and I just think the Wildcats are too one-dimensional with Dixon. Again, I'm not denying that Eric Dixon's a good basketball player. He is. Eric Dixon is a phenomenal basketball player. But once you get past him, what the hell is Villanova? Exactly. So give me St. John's. I get the games in Villanova, but I think the Red Storm are just the better basketball team. We like St. John's to go on the road and take care of business here against the Villanova Wildcats. We go on to our second best bet of the video, and we move to the Southeastern Conference, as we've got the Ole Miss Rebels going on the road to Columbia, South Carolina, to take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Ole Miss is a 4.5-point favorite. ESPN took down the odds, but when I saw it earlier in the night, or like a couple hours ago, Ole Miss was a 4.5-point favorite. I believe they're still at that. We look at the money line, obviously, for this. You get Ole Miss right now as a minus 210 favorite. You get the Gamecocks at a plus 175 dog, which I find a little bit interesting considering South Carolina is still yet to win a game in the SEC. So if we get this line, which obviously we have already tonight, I've already jumped on 4.5 for Ole Miss, we're going to take it. Guys, South Carolina is 0-10 this season in the Southeastern Conference. I don't think this is their first victory. If they're going to beat a team in the SEC, it's not going to beat a team like Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss isn't, blowing anybody's socks off right now. They're winning basketball games, but they're not, again, an Auburn. They're not they're not an Bama, even though they beat Bama this season. They're not a Tennessee. They're not a Florida. But they are in that top half of the conference, undoubtedly, potentially even in the top 6 of the conference. I think you have to put them in the top 6. Ole Miss is ranked 19th. Again, they did lose to Mississippi State a couple weeks ago, but right now, I'd argue they're playing much better basketball than the Bulldogs. This Ole Miss team is 7-4 in the SEC with a 3-game losing streak to Mississippi State, A&M, and Missouri mixed in, but since then they beat Texas, lost to Auburn, okay, and then won back-to-back games against Kentucky, then on the road at Louisiana State. And I get it, they only beat LSU by 2 points, but guys, South Carolina is so much worse. I don't know if we've ever really gone deep into a South Carolina basketball game this season, primarily because, we did when they played Indiana earlier in the year, which, whoops, we picked South Carolina to win that game. I think that's the last time. No, we picked Clemson to beat them, and somehow South Carolina beat Clemson in overtime, which doesn't feel right, just comparing how Clemson's playing now to how South Carolina's playing. But South Carolina's 0-10 in the SEC. So again, this is why we haven't talked about South Carolina Gamecocks basketball in a while. It's because, we haven't gotten odds that have, made it available for us to talk about South Carolina. Because in every game they play, they are tremendously large underdogs, right? Again, this is an 0-10 start to SEC play for them. Lost to Mississippi State, lost to Bama. By the way, the Mississippi State lost by 35 points. The Bama lost by 20. The Auburn loss somehow only lost by 3. The Vandy lost, they lose by 3. They go to Oklahoma, lose by 20. They lose to Florida by 1 point. They lose to Mississippi State by 5 in OT. Georgia by 11. A&M by 4. Kentucky by 23. So yes, the Gamecocks do have their random assortment of games where they play teams competitively. They do. They will have those games. I don't think Ole Miss is all that competitive against them. I think Ole Miss blows them out. Now, if we're talking about South Carolina, you got to talk about their future NBA prospect, we would assume, obviously an only star player, that's Colin Murray-Boyles. CMP is a really good basketball player. I like Colin Murray-Boyles a lot. Unfortunately for Murray-Boyles, he's been tasked with dealing with this South Carolina team that isn't very talented around him. Let's just be honest here. Colin Murray-Boyles, second-year guy here at South Carolina, averaging 15.5 and 9 points a game. 15.5 and 9 boards a game. He's by far the best guy on the South Carolina team, but there's not much help around him. It is all Colin Murray-Boyles. He is usually the one leading this team in points every single night. And Ole Miss, they're led by Sean Padula. He's averaging 15 points, but it's not just Sean Padula, obviously. Now, I don't know how Ole Miss would operate if it was just, if Sean Padula had to take a Colin Murray-Boyles type role at Ole Miss. I don't know how that would work. But still, you get Padula, who's a good guard. You get Matthew Morrell, Jalen Murray, Jamin Brakefield, Dre Davis, Malik Dia, who sometimes comes off the bench, sometimes starts. I mean, this is a good Ole Miss team, and it's a deep unit. Again, when you can get a guy like Malik Dia coming off the bench, a guy who randomly will hit a three. I feel like every game I watch of Ole Miss, Dia chucks up a random three and hits one. But you get Devon Barnes as well off the bench. I mean, this is a deep Ole Miss squad, and that's where I think they win this game against South Carolina and ultimately cover the 4.5 points as well. Unlike some of these other teams that will play South Carolina, obviously everybody beats the Gamecocks, but they'll play South Carolina and they'll keep them close. No, I think Ole Miss wins with their bench in this game, and obviously against South Carolina is a team that can't always go to their bench unit, for a big portion of the game, obviously, because their bench unit sucks, let's just be honest. But that's where Ole Miss will win, is in those minutes where Colin Murray-Boyles, who averages 30 minutes a night, played 29 in the last one against Kentucky, when Murray-Boyles is not on the court, when Nick Pringle is not on the court, when Jamari Thomas isn't on the court, that's when Ole Miss is going to take over this basketball game. I mean, Murray-Boyles, Thomas, and Pringle, they all average about anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes a night. Again, there are 15 minutes in this game where some of those guys aren't on the court. And those guys, again, for South Carolina, are game changers because, and again, especially Colin Murray-Boyles, he's so much different than the rest of this team, obviously. So that's where Ole Miss wins. I personally think it's with the depth. I get the games in Columbia, but I think Ole Miss continues to, climb up the ranks right now, just in the rankings in general, and obviously in the SEC. Coming off a competitive game on Saturday in Baton Rouge against Louisiana State, I get it, but this is the one that they should be able to just completely take over before their huge matchup on Saturday. It's the Egg Bowl of basketball, I guess, when, of course, the Ole Miss Rebels take on Mississippi State. They played earlier this season. Mississippi State got them in overtime. Now it's in Oxford on Saturday. So again, it's a tune-up spot for Ole Miss. I don't think they're taking South Carolina lightly. I think they blow this team out here in Columbia, and then they get that big game on Saturday on ESPN. So give me the Ole Miss Rebels to go into Columbia, cover the 4.5 points, and win the game outright, obviously here against the South Carolina Gamecocks. We go on to our third best bet of the video as we move to the Atlantic Coast Conference. So obviously the ACC was the only conference last video, obviously yesterday, that didn't produce us a victory. It is what it is. Syracuse is Syracuse. I don't know. That was bad. I thought they were, for as bad as the Orange have been at times this season, I still thought they could go out there and beat a team like Miami. But then I witnessed Jaleel Bethea score 20 points and chuck up 4 three-pointers. I don't remember how many threes it was. I think it was 4 three-pointers and win the game for the Miami Hurricanes. Ridiculous. Miami pulled away at the end. It is what it is. We're going back to the ACC here, though. Again, we're picking a lot of favorites today because I just like the value with a lot of these spots here. Kind of the same situation as Ole Miss, South Carolina. Obviously, again, the line is a little bit larger here for the Louisville Cardinals, but I'm okay with it. I think Louisville's such a more complex basketball team than NC State. I'm not going to make the direct comparison to Louisville and SMU, a spot where I'll just be honest, we were on the complete wrong side of earlier this season. I think we bought in too much into the SMU hype early in the season. They were winning games in the ACC, and they still are. Don't get me wrong, this is a 10-3 team in the conference, but there is a definite gap between a team like Louisville and a team like Southern Methodist. And obviously that was apparent in the game that they played in Texas early this season. Louisville ended up winning that game 98-73. So where I make the comp between that Louisville SMU game to this Louisville NC State game is, why is Louisville only a 6.5 point favorite on the road? Guys, NC State hasn't won a basketball game since their win over Notre Dame. That came on January 8th. Prior to that, their only other ACC victory comes in overtime at home December 7th, against the Florida State Seminoles. What has this team done since the Notre Dame win? They lose to North Carolina by 2 points at home, whatever. They go to VTech and lose. They go to Cal and lose. All those games are one-score games. But this is where it just starts to kind of dwindle down for NC State. SMU by 6, Duke by 10, Clemson by 10, Cal by 12, and they played Stanford very competitive on the road at Stanford. Here's the thing, though. Louisville's good, man. This is a Louisville team that can score, and I don't know if NC State's going to be able to keep up. That's the difference, honestly, for me, between some of these other games they're playing in the ACC with teams that are going to keep them around. Louisville's going to put up points, and again, that was apparent in the SMU game. You look at their last 2 games that they played, kind of similar situations, if I'm being honest. I mean, I'd put NC State, I'd rate them a little bit higher, obviously, than the Boston College Eagles, but they have the same record in the ACC, and technically overall-wise, I mean, I know that doesn't mean much at this point in the season, but Boston College does have a better record than NC State does. Anyways, Louisville 2 games ago goes to Boston, and they beat BC 84-58. And they go proceed to beat Miami, obviously 88-78, but they went on the road and dominated that Boston College team. Again, this is a Louisville squad that is going to score. In all of their victories dating back to their win at Pitt, they have covered this line. We're talking about the Miami win, the Boston College win, the Wake Forest win, the SMU win, Virginia, Syracuse. I mean, they cover this line in pretty much every single game that they go out there and win. This is a team that right now is 11-2 in the ACC with losses to Georgia Tech on the road. And then a loss earlier, obviously, in ACC play, I believe their first game, against the Duke Blue Devils. But again, we know how good Duke is. They only have one loss in the conference, and that was that game just last weekend, obviously, against Clemson. By the way, I mean, Clemson, fairly easy victory the other day against North Carolina, just saying. It was definitely not a letdown spot for Clemson, all right? We took the bait, and we were fine. Anyways, Louisville's going to score against NC State. And I keep saying it every time we talk about NC State basketball, they are nowhere near the same team they were last season. I mean, I remember, again, if you've probably seen the graphic on Twitter where ESPN put up a graphic during the game of like, where are they now? Looking at the NC State Final Four team from last season compared to what they have this year. I mean, again, DJ Horn, is DJ Horn in the G League? No, I believe he's playing it. DJ Horn's playing in Europe. DJ Burns, obviously, is playing, I think, in Asia, if I'm not mistaken. Casey Morrell, I think's a TV analyst, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was what he's doing now. Mohamed Diarra, I believe, is playing in Africa or Europe. And then Ben Middlebrooks, obviously, is still around, right? Ben Middlebrooks is on this team. He hasn't made the biggest impact. And obviously, Jaden Taylor is still playing as well. Jaden Taylor has been one of NC State's best guys this season. But again, it's not nowhere near the same team, obviously, as last year. And I get it. NC State was really bad in the regular season last year. They pulled a rabbit out the hat, obviously, to win the ACC tourney and obviously get to the Final Four. I was cheering for NC State the entire way last year, but they're not the same. And obviously, DJ Burns, towards the end of the season, just became that team's identity with the way he was able to back guys down in the post, his passing ability as well. That's what NC State basketball ultimately became towards the end of the year, and that's how they were so successful, and they kept winning games, obviously, until they were eliminated. They're nowhere near that this season. Jaden Taylor is still around. Marcus Hill's their leading scorer, but the Wolfpack are nowhere near, that magic that they found last year. They're competitive. They play very close in a lot of these games, but I don't know. I think Louisville's able to find a way to win this game by more than 4.5 points or 6.5 points. When you see NC State host these teams that, are supposed to beat them and are better than them, they do lose and they don't cover this line. Clemson beat them by 10. I know they went to Duke and lost, but Duke beat them by 10. North Carolina, I can't trust North Carolina. And SMU, same thing, but SMU beats them by 6. Well, Louisville's better than SMU. I mean, you know what you're going to get out the Cardinals. They can score, and they can score effectively. You got really good scorers in Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards. I mean, this is a Rain Smith as well. This is a good team. This is a good Louisville team, and they proved me wrong again in the SMU game, and I decided, all right, we're done ever picking against Louisville. Louisville's a good team in the ACC. Again, how good is the ACC as a whole? I don't know, but I definitely think Louisville right now has to be looked at as the third best team. It's got to be Duke, Clemson, and Louisville right now. I'm going to take Louisville to keep on winning here. I think the offense is just too much. I think it's a high-powered offense, obviously, off the Cardinals, and I don't think NC State's going to be able to keep up with that. Give me Louisville to win the basketball game and to cover the 6.5 points as well on the road at the PNC Arena. I believe it's PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's go on to our fourth best bet of the video as we move to a game here between Valpo and Belmont. Now, I believe we opened the college basketball season this year talking about how bad Valpo basketball was last year, and I believe that was my whole reasoning for picking against Valpo early in the year. I think it was a game that they played against Liberty, and obviously Liberty went into Valpo and won that game and covered. Now, Valpo proved me wrong a little bit. In non-conference play, they're able to win some basketball games, but Valpo in the Missouri Valley has turned into what I thought the Beacons were going to be this season, and that's just bottom and, a bottom feeder as a whole in the Missouri Valley. Team has not won a basketball game since their win over the Indiana State Sycamores in overtime on January 8th. Since then, they have dropped 9 straight games to Murray State by 11, where they score 47 points. They lose to Belmont by 7. They lose to UIC, Drake, Evansville, Southern Illinois, Illinois State on the road, in Terre Haute to Indiana State, and against Murray State by 18 points as well. They just get outplayed in every single game that they play. Valpo just gets beat in every facet. Now, again, they pulled off their miracle win over West Michigan earlier in the season. We picked the Broncos to win that game in Kalamazoo over Valpo, and I witnessed Valpo go on a 25-2 run to close the basketball game to win. Western Michigan, again, is permanently banned on the channel. But Valpo, again, they just get beat in every facet of basketball. They usually, again, they can't keep up scoring-wise. They play all right defense, but usually their opponent plays better defense. Again, I think the comp we can make on that for Valpo is the game against Murray State. Not a bad defensive game for Valpo. They hold Murray State, the Racers, to 58 points, but they can't get going scoring-wise either. And for the Beacons, again, it's just, there's no consistency with scoring, right? 3 of their last 4 games, All Right has been their leading scorer. He's dropped at least 20-something points in all 3 of those games. He's a guard who averages 13 points a night for Valpo. But they're still losing those games by 10 points. It's just, again, they have one guy who goes off. Last game it was Jefferson De La Cruz Monegro, who is averaging 11 points a night. I believe he dropped 20-something in their last game. De La Cruz dropped 22 points in that game. They still lose it by 18. So they're going to get big nights. Hell, they're big as well in Cooper Schwieger, who is their leading scorer this year, averaging 14.5 points a game and 8 boards a game. He's always in the glass. He's averaging 10 boards a night in his last 5, but again, this team's just getting blown out. They just get outplayed. So that's why I'm confused a little bit why Belmont's only a 4.5 point favorite. I get it, Valpo, again, you can kind of make the case like we were talking about in our last spot, obviously, that they are somewhat competitive, but Belmont's just by far the better basketball team. Again, we look at Valpo 3-11 in the Missouri Valley, second to last team in the conference, only ahead of Missouri State. Belmont, the 4th best team in the MVC behind Drake, who we're going to get to in a few minutes here, Northern Iowa, and Bradley. And then again, there is the Belmont Bruins, who have won back-to-back games at Bradley and against Missouri State. Again, 2 very contrasting teams. Obviously, Bradley being at the top of the conference and Missouri State being at the dead last bottom. But Belmont has bounced back since their back-to-back losses to the Illinois State Cardinals and to Evansville. The Evansville loss is not ideal, but they've won back-to-back, and we've already seen Belmont go out there and beat this Valpo team this season. They beat them by 7 points, and I would argue that Valpo is definitely playing better basketball at that point in the season. Guys, Valpo's already waved the white flag. They've already thrown in the towel. This season is a complete wrap for them. I get it. They're going to get a shot in the Missouri Valley tournament like they did last year, and they got blown out in their first game, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure that was the game I watched last year, Valpo. Yeah, where Belmont beat them 86-61 in the tournament. Again, guys, Valpo's just, they're not that good. Belmont should be able to outscore them. Belmont's the better defensive basketball team. I just think they are. All Right, again, has been playing good basketball for Valpo recently, but Belmont's the all-around better team. We look at the scorers on the squad. Jonathan Pierre is averaging 14. Carter Witt, who's averaging 13. Tyler Lundblade is averaging 11.5. Isaiah Walker averages 11.5 as well. The all-around better team here is the Belmont Bruins, and I think they go on the road to Valpo, Indiana, and take care of business here against Valpo and cover the 4.5 points as well. Let's go on to our final game of the night as we go to Normal, Illinois. I kid you not, I did not know this was a city in the state of Illinois. It's just called Normal, and it has 52,000 people. Well, I'll be damned. We've got the Illinois State Cardinals, Redbirds, taking on the Drake Bulldogs. I mean, come on, look at this logo. Is this not a cardinal? Like, I don't think there are many Redbirds that aren't Cardinals. Regardless, we're taking Drake here. I think this is to the surprise of absolutely nobody. Drake is probably the best. I think I can name them probably the best mid-major in the country right now. Obviously with Irvine losing their last game to UC San Diego. I hope the Big West gets 2 bids in the NCAA tournament. I don't think so. I think it's just going to be whoever wins that tourney, obviously with the Big West, is going to get in. Either UCI or UCSD will probably be an 11 or a 12 seed, and whoever loses will be on to the NIT. But Drake, again, we can say is by far the best mid-major in the country, right? 22-2 this season. Their losses, UIC on the road and then Murray State at home. But that was back-to-back games that they played, I believe, very turn of the year. Yeah, January 1st and January 5th, losing back-to-back games to those squads. They haven't lost since. They've won, I believe, 10 in a row. They beat Bradley, Evansville, Illinois State in their first matchup by 4 points. Indiana State, Valpo, Missouri State, Northern Iowa, Southern Illinois, Murray State, and Indiana State. And again, a lot of the credit can go to Bennett Sturts, who's been great. He's averaging 18.5 points a game. Daniel Abreu averages 11. Mitch Mascari averages 11 points as well. Tavion Banks averages 10. This is just a really good Drake team. It just is. Again, the best mid-major in the country, potentially. Illinois State, not a horrible team, right? Middle of the pack squad in the Missouri Valley, 7-7 in the conference, 15-10 as a whole this season. They are coming off a loss in their last game at UNI against the Panthers, obviously, but prior to that, 3 straight victories over the likes of the Belmont Bruins, Valpo, and UIC on the road. The Redbirds are led by their 3 in Chase Walker. This is a guy who averages 15 and 6 a night. Plays some of the 3 and plays for the 4 as well for the Redbirds. Dalton Banks averages 9. Johnny also averages 15 points a game for the Redbirds. Again, they can score, definitely. I just think Drake's the better basketball team. This is as simple as it gets here. Drake has not lost a game, again, in the Missouri Valley since January 5th. They've been on fire recently. Sturts has been great. I mean, Sturts has led this team in scoring in every game since the Valpo game on January 22nd. Sturts had 24 in the Valpo game, 18 in the Missouri State victory, 20 in the Northern Iowa win, 30 against Southern Illinois, 23 against Murray State, and 20 in the overtime win over Indiana State. When it comes down to this game, again, and Sturts, by the way, leads his team in assists pretty much every single night as well. The dude's a baller. When it comes down to it, Drake finds ways to win. They do. And I'm surprised, again, the odds are this close. I get it. The first matchup between these 2 squads, it was a 4-point victory for Drake. But if we're expecting the Drake Bulldogs to come out on the right side of this game here against the Redbirds of Illinois State, we think they can likely cover 3 points as well. I'm not scared of, it's 2.5 points. Drake can win and likely not cover the spread. Again, it can happen. But if Drake's winning, I would expect them to cover this as well. I don't think Drake has had a game all year long in the Missouri Valley. They haven't. Where they haven't won by more than 2.5 points. How their win over K-State in Kansas City, they beat Kansas State by 3 points. I don't think they've had a win all year long that has been by less than 3. So we're okay with Drake again. Essentially, the way I'm seeing this, it's a pick'em that we think Drake can likely just win the game by 3 points, which is literally what the odds with the spread means. That's probably the dumbest way I could have said something there. Anyways, I think Drake's just the better basketball team. Again, this team has not lost the Missouri Valley since January 5th. Illinois State has not been a bad team, obviously, with Chase Walker at the helm. They've been a good squad, winning 3 out their last 4, but that loss in Northern Iowa on the road the other night isn't great. And now you get Drake, who's the best team in the conference, coming off a loss. I get you're hosting them, but it's hard, again, to pick against one of the best mid-majors, if not the best mid-major in the country. Give me the Drake Bulldogs. Go on the road to Normal, Illinois, and take care of business against the Illinois State Redbirds. So folks, thank you all for watching our 5 best bets for college basketball here on Wednesday, February 12th. If you have not yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back in a couple hours for our NBA predictions as well. Folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.